The check slapped onto table 12, the humid diner air making it stick for a second too long. "Here you go," Adam said, his voice clipped. He didn't have time for this. The woman in the impossibly expensive suit had been watching him for an hour, her intense gaze slowing him down. Behind her, a young girl with the same piercing blue eyes watched him too. He just wanted them to pay and leave. His son Sam was waiting in the back. He turned to walk away, but her voice, quiet and sharp, cut through the clatter of plates. "Wait," he sighed, turning back with weary patience. "Is there a problem with the bill?" She stood, looking from Adam to the young girl, then back again. The entire diner seemed to fade into a dull roar. She leaned closer, and what she whispered wasn't about the bill. It was about a secret she had kept for 11 years, a secret that was about to shatter his entire world. Just an hour earlier, the lunch rush had hit like a tidal wave. Adam moved through the narrow aisles of the Morning Glory diner with a practiced, almost desperate grace. He balanced 3 plates on his left arm, a coffee pot in his right hand, and a running list of orders in his head. Ketchup for table 4, extra napkins for table 7, side of fries for the kid in the corner booth who'd already spilled his milkshake once. It was a controlled chaos he knew well, a whirlwind of sizzling bacon, clanking cutlery, and the low hum of a dozen overlapping conversations. His life was this diner. It was the scent of grease that clung to his clothes, the ache in his feet that never quite faded, and the polite, strained smile he wore like a uniform. But it paid the bills. More importantly, it allowed him to keep his 5-year-old son, Sam, close. The diner's owner, a stout, kind-hearted woman named Maria, let Sam stay in the small back office, coloring or playing on an old tablet, as long as he didn't cause trouble. "Adam, order up!" Maria's voice boomed from the kitchen pass-through. "Got it," he called back, deftly swapping the empty coffee pot for 2 plates of cheeseburgers. As he turned, he noticed them for the first time. Table 12. They were out of place. In a diner filled with construction workers, office clerks, and tired shoppers, they were a stark, polished contrast. The woman wore a dark tailored suit that probably cost more than his car. Her hair was pulled back into a severe, elegant knot, and her face was a mask of cool composure. Beside her sat a young girl, maybe 10 or 11, with a stillness that was unusual for a child her age. She had the same dark hair and the same intensely blue eyes as the woman. Adam's first thought was that they were tourists who'd taken a wrong turn. His second was that they were health inspectors. He gave them a quick, professional nod and continued on his way, but he could feel their eyes on him. Especially the woman's. It wasn't a casual glance, it was a stare, an unnerving, analytical gaze that seemed to peel back the layers of his worn-out apron and tired smile. It made his skin crawl. He'd dealt with all kinds of customers, rude, friendly, strange, but this was different. It felt personal. He refilled a coffee for Mr. Henderson, a retired mailman who came in every day. "How's the boy, Adam?" the old man asked, his voice a gravelly comfort. "He's good, Frank." Drew a picture of a superhero he calls Super Dad this morning. "Apparently, my superpower is making pancakes." Frank chuckled. "There are worse powers to have." Adam smiled, a genuine one this time. Moments like these were the small pockets of air that kept him from drowning in the daily grind. He glanced towards the back office, a familiar warmth spreading through his chest. Sam was everything. After his wife, Sarah, had died during childbirth, Adam's world had shrunk to the size of a tiny, perfect, helpless baby. His art, his passion, his dream, had been packed away in dusty boxes. His life was no longer about canvas and paint. It was about diapers, scraped knees, and the boundless love he felt for his son. Just then, the office door creaked open, and a small head with a mop of unruly brown hair peeked out. "Daddy," Sam whispered, clutching a crayon drawing. Adam's focus snapped to him instantly. "Hey, buddy." I thought you were finishing your cartoon. I did, Sam said, running over and wrapping his arms around Adam's leg. I made this for you. He held up the drawing. It was a wobbly, colorful depiction of a stick figure flipping a giant pancake. Adam's heart clenched. He crouched down, ignoring the bustling diner around them. Wow, that's the best one yet. Is that me? Sam nodded proudly. You're super dad. Adam hugged him tightly, breathing in the scent of crayons and bubble gum. I love it, Sammy. Now, can you do me a huge favor and go back inside for a few more minutes? Maria has a juice box for you. Okay, Daddy. Sam gave him another quick squeeze and scurried back to the office. When Adam stood up, he caught the woman at table 12 staring again. But this time, her mask had cracked. Her lips were parted slightly, her blue eyes wide with an emotion he couldn't decipher. It looked like shock, or maybe pain. For a split second, he felt a strange jolt, a flicker of something he couldn't name. He shook it off. She was just another customer. He had work to do. The rush finally began to ebb. Tables emptied, the noise level dropped, and Adam could finally take a breath. He grabbed the bill for table 12. It was time for them to go. He needed to clean up, cash out, and pick up his son. His real life was waiting. He walked over, his professional smile back in place. That's when he dropped the check on the table and turned to leave. Wait. He turned back, his patience wearing thin. Is there a problem with the bill? The woman stood up. She was taller than he'd thought, powerful. Her eyes, now just feet from his, were a shade of blue he'd once known better than his own. They were a stormy sea of regret, fear, and something else. Something that looked terrifyingly like hope. She looked at the young girl, who was now watching them with a quiet, curious intensity. Then she looked back at Adam. The diner, with its lingering smell of coffee and fried onions, faded away. The clatter of the kitchen, the murmur of the few remaining customers. It all went silent. There was only the thudding of his own heart and the sound of her voice, a whisper that traveled across 12 years of silence to strike him like lightning. I need you to meet someone. Meet your daughter? Adam stared, his mind refusing to process the words. He looked from the woman's face, a face he now recognized, a face that had haunted his dreams for years, to the girl sitting in the booth. The girl had his chin. She had his slight frown of concentration. And she had her mother's piercing blue eyes. Amelia Chambers. It was Amelia. And this was their daughter. His daughter. The world tilted on its axis, and Adam Rhodes, the man who thought he had buried his past, found himself standing in the ruins of his own life. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Adam's mind, which seconds before had been a frantic list of diner tasks, went utterly blank. He felt the weight of the burger plate still in his hand, the sticky patch of spilled soda on the floor near his shoe. But none of it registered. The world had shrunk to the space between the three of them. What? The word came out as a dry rasp. It wasn't a question. It was a plea for her to take it back, to say it was a sick joke. Amelia's composure, the icy shield she wore like armor, was gone. Her eyes were filled with a desperate, pleading terror. Adam, please, she whispered, her gaze flicking towards the young girl, Lucy, who was now watching him with wide, intelligent eyes. Not here. He stared at Lucy. The initial shock gave way to a dizzying, horrifying clarity. It was like looking at a photograph of himself from a forgotten childhood, blended with a face he had once memorized. His chin, his brow, the way her left eyebrow arched slightly higher than her right when she was curious. It was all there, a ghost of him, living in a stranger's face. The plates in his hand trembled. The clatter as he dropped them onto an empty table nearby seemed to echo like a gunshot in the suddenly silent diner. Maria, wiping down the counter, looked up, her brow furrowed with concern. A few remaining customers turned to stare. Adam's blood ran cold, then hot. The confusion curdled into a raw, burning anger. 12 years. 12 years of silence, of believing she had just walked away, and now she shows up here, in his place of work, and drops a bomb like this in front of strangers. "Outside," he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. He grabbed her by the arm, his grip tight. Her expensive suit felt thin and fragile under his fingers. He ignored her slight wince, pulling her past the curious stairs and through the swinging doors that led to the kitchen, then shoved open the heavy metal door to the back alley. The sudden shift from the diner's warm, greasy air to the cool, damp alley was jarring. The smell of garbage and rain-soaked concrete filled his lungs. He let go of her, and she stumbled back against the brick wall. Lucy had followed them, her small figure hesitating in the doorway, looking scared. "What the hell was that?" Adam demanded, his voice shaking with a fury he hadn't felt in years. "You think you can just walk in here after 12 years and say that to me?" "I didn't plan this," Amelia said, her own voice trembling. She pushed a stray strand of hair from her face, her movements jerky and uncertain. "I saw you. I saw you with your son, and I couldn't hold it in anymore." "My son?" Adam laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Yeah, my son, Sam. The one I've been raising on my own. The one whose mother died giving birth to him. My real life, Amelia. A life you know nothing about." Every word was a punch, and he could see them landing. Her face crumpled. "Adam, I know. I'm sorry. You have to believe me. I never wanted to—" "To what?" he shot back. "Leave? Disappear without a trace? Or keep my own daughter a secret from me for over a decade?" He finally said the words out loud, and they tasted like poison. He looked past Amelia to the girl in the doorway. Lucy flinched, her eyes welling up with tears. Seeing her cry sent a confusing, painful pang through Adam's chest. His anger was with Amelia, not this child. This innocent girl who was caught in the middle of a story she never asked to be a part of. He lowered his voice, but the rage still simmered beneath the surface. "Is it true?" he asked Amelia, his eyes locked on her. "Don't lie to me." "Not again." "Is she my daughter?" Amelia choked back a sob and nodded, her whole body shaking. "Yes, her name is Lucy. She's 1111. The math was a brutal, swift calculation in his head. She'd left in the spring. By summer, she would have known. She had known for 11 years. The betrayal was so immense, so profound. He felt like he couldn't breathe. "Why?" It was the only question that mattered. "Why wouldn't you tell me?" "I couldn't," she cried, her hands twisting in front of her. "My family. They—" She stopped, shaking her head as if the words themselves were too dangerous to speak. "They made it clear I was to stay away from you. They told me it was for the best, for both of us. They said they would—" "They would what?" Adam pressed, stepping closer. "What could they possibly do that's worse than this?" "You don't understand how powerful they are." Her voice rose with a note of hysteria. "They would have ruined you, Adam." "It wasn't just a threat. They would have destroyed your life to keep us apart." "I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" he scoffed, disbelief warring with the genuine fear in her eyes. "By letting me believe you just threw me away? By letting me grieve for you, for what we had? By letting our daughter grow up without a father? That was your idea of protection." The alley door creaked open again. It was Maria, her round face etched with worry. "Adam? Is everything all right?" I heard shouting. She glanced from Adam's furious expression to Amelia's tear-streaked face, and then to the terrified child in the doorway. "Should I call someone?" The interruption shattered the intense, suffocating bubble around them. Adam looked at Maria, at the back door to his job, at the life that was spinning out of his control. He couldn't do this, not here, not now. He needed to think. He needed to breathe air that wasn't filled with the ghosts of his past. He ran a hand over his face, the exhaustion of his shift crashing down on him, magnified by the emotional onslaught. He looked at Lucy again, who was now trying to discreetly wipe tears from her cheeks. Her bravery, her quiet dignity in this impossible situation, struck him to his core. "I have to get back to work," he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. He looked at Amelia. "This conversation isn't over." "Not by a long shot." She nodded eagerly, relief washing over her face. "Anything, Adam. I'll tell you everything." He held up a hand to stop her. "Not here. Tomorrow. The fountain at West Creek Park. Noon." He needed a neutral space, a public place, somewhere he felt he had a sliver of control. "Come alone." Amelia's eyes darted to Lucy. "Adam, she needs to—" "No," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I need to talk to you first. I need answers. If you want even a chance of me ever speaking to you again, you'll be there." Alone. He didn't wait for her reply. He pushed past her, gave Maria a weak, reassuring nod that didn't fool her for a second, and walked back into the bright, noisy diner. He could feel Amelia's and Lucy's eyes on his back, but he didn't turn around. He walked straight to the back office, where Sam was humming to himself, oblivious, pushing a small toy car across the floor. Adam knelt, pulled his son into a hug, and held on like he was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. The rest of Adam's shift passed in a blur. He moved on autopilot, clearing tables, refilling drinks, and forcing smiles that felt like they were cracking his face. Maria watched him with worried eyes but didn't press, for which he was grateful. Every clink of a fork, every burst of laughter from a customer, felt jarring and distant, as if he were watching his own life from behind a thick wall of glass. His mind was a storm of a single name, Amelia, and a single, impossible image. A little girl with his eyes. When he finally clocked out, the exhaustion hit him like a physical blow. He collected Sam, who was half asleep on a beanbag in the office, and carried him the few blocks to their small apartment. The walk was a familiar rhythm, but tonight, every step felt heavy. The evening routine was his sanctuary, the one thing that had remained constant and true after Sarah's death. Bath time with plastic dinosaurs, a bedtime story about a brave knight, and tucking Sam into his small bed with his favorite stuffed bear. "Daddy, are you sad?" Sam asked, his voice sleepy as Adam smoothed his hair back from his forehead. The question caught Adam off guard. "No, buddy." "Why do you ask?" "Your face is wrinkly." Adam forced a small smile. "Just tired, Sammy. Long day." "Okay. Love you, Daddy. I love you more, kiddo." He watched Sam's breathing even out into the soft rhythm of sleep, and the love he felt for his son was so fierce, it was almost painful. It was an anchor in the storm that had just ripped through his life. But tonight, the anchor felt like it was dragging. After closing Sam's door, Adam was left alone in the suffocating silence of the apartment. He paced the worn floorboards of the living room, his mind racing. He couldn't reconcile the Amelia he remembered, the passionate, laughing girl who wore paint-splattered jeans and dreamed of changing the world, with the cold, powerful woman in the diner. He found himself kneeling in front of the hall closet, pulling out a dusty cardboard box labeled Before. He hadn't opened it in years. Inside, beneath old college textbooks, was a smaller shoebox. His breath hitched as he lifted the lid. The contents were a ghost of a life he'd once lived, a pressed, faded daisy from their first picnic, a ticket stub from a concert, and a stack of charcoal sketches. His fingers, clumsy and hesitant, picked up the top one. It was her. Amelia, asleep on his old lumpy sofa, a book resting on her chest, a soft smile on her lips. He had captured the light, the curve of her cheek, the fierce intelligence that even sleep couldn't hide. He flipped through the others, Amelia arguing a point in class, her eyes flashing with passion. Amelia laughing, head thrown back by the river. Their love had been a whirlwind, fast, intense, all-consuming. They had talked for hours about the future, his art gallery, her nonprofit. Then one morning, He'd woken up and she was gone. A note on the pillow. "I'm sorry. I can't do this. Don't look for me." Her phone was disconnected. Her dorm room was empty. She had simply vanished, erasing herself from his life as if she'd never been there. He had been devastated, then angry, and finally, hollow. Now he knew it was all a lie. She hadn't just left him. She had left with a part of him. Across town, in the sterile silence of the hotel's penthouse suite, Emilia Chambers was living a different kind of hell. The luxurious room, with its panoramic city views, felt like a cage. Lucy sat curled on a silk sofa, her tablet forgotten on the cushion beside her. She hadn't said a word since they'd returned from the diner. "Lucy, honey," Emilia said softly, sitting beside her. "Are you okay?" Lucy looked up, her blue eyes, Adam's eyes, filled with confusion. Is he really my father? The question was a direct hit. Emilia swallowed the lump in her throat. "Yes, sweetheart. He is. Is he mad at me?" "Oh no, never," Emilia said quickly, pulling her daughter into a hug. Lucy felt stiff in her arms. "He's not mad at you at all. He's surprised. And he's a little mad at me. This is all very complicated, and it's my fault, not yours. Why didn't I know him?" Lucy's voice was small. "All the other kids at school have dads. You always just said he was away." "I know," Emilia whispered, her own tears starting to fall. "And I am so sorry. I thought I was protecting you. And him. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to fix." Later, after a restless Lucy had finally fallen asleep in her sprawling king-sized bed, Emilia's phone buzzed. The caller ID was a name she dreaded. Harrison Blackwood, her father's lead attorney, the family's fixer. She stepped out onto the balcony, the cold night air doing nothing to calm her racing heart. "What do you want, Harrison?" "A little bird told me you caused a scene at a Greasy Spoon this afternoon." His voice was smooth, cold, and utterly devoid of warmth. "Your security detail is required to report any deviations from the plan, Emilia. You know that it was none of your business. When it comes to the Chambers family legacy, everything is my business," he retorted. "Your father is displeased. He wants me to remind you of the terms of your agreement. The man, Adam Rhodes, is to remain a part of your past. Contact was a violation, a reckless emotional indulgence." Emilia's grip on the phone tightened. "A little girl deserves to know her father." "A little girl is the heir to a multi-billion-dollar empire," Harrison corrected her. "An empire that requires stability, predictability. Introducing a financially unstable artist-turned-waiter into the narrative is not predictable. It's a liability." There was a pause, and his voice dropped, losing its corporate sheen and becoming something more menacing. "Don't make us clean up a mess, Emilia. We both know how unpleasant that can be, for everyone involved. End this now." The line went dead. Emilia stared out at the city lights, trembling not from the cold, but from the chillingly clear threat. This meeting tomorrow wasn't just about earning Adam's forgiveness. It was an act of rebellion, an act that could bring the full, crushing weight of her family's power down on the only man she had ever truly loved. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and autumn leaves. Adam arrived at West Creek Park 10 minutes early. He chose a worn wooden bench facing the grand central fountain, its cascading water a constant, soothing rush of sound. It felt like the only calm thing in a world that had become violently unstable. He watched as joggers trotted past, as a young mother pushed a stroller, as a man threw a frisbee for his dog. Ordinary life. A life that had been his just yesterday. He rehearsed what he would say, the angry words, the accusations. But they felt hollow now, flimsy shields against the hurricane of emotion that was tearing him apart. He wasn't just angry. He was heartbroken. He was terrified. He was a father to a daughter he didn't know. At noon exactly, he saw her. She walked with the same purpose and confidence she had in the diner, but today her shoulders were tight, her hands clenched at her sides. She had forgone the severe power suit for dark trousers and a simple cream-colored blouse. It was a deliberate choice, an attempt to bridge the chasm of wealth and power between them. It didn't work. To him, she still looked like a visitor from another planet. She spotted him, and her stride faltered for a moment before she regained her composure. She stopped in front of his bench, a respectful distance between them. "Adam," she said, her voice quiet. "Thank you for coming." "I'm not here for you," he replied, his tone flat and cold. "I'm here for an explanation. You said you'd give me one. So, explain." She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for a physical blow. She didn't sit. She stood before him, as if she were a defendant in a courtroom. "My father. He found out about us. We were so wrapped up in our own world, I didn't realize he was having me followed. He called me into his office one day. It was cold, sterile, like a boardroom. He told me it was over between us." Adam said nothing, his face a mask of stone. "I laughed at him," Amelia continued, a bitter smile touching her lips for a second. "I told him he couldn't control me, that I loved you, that we had plans, and that's when he showed me what real power was." Her voice trembled. He didn't yell. He just calmly opened a file on his desk. "It was you, Adam. A whole file on you. Your school records, your financial aid, even pictures of you at your part-time job." And then he showed me another file, a fabricated one. She finally sat on the edge of the bench, as if her legs could no longer support her. "It was a police report. It accused you of selling drugs out of your dorm room. He had witnesses lined up, people who worked for him, ready to perjure themselves. He had a sample of the evidence they were prepared to plant in your room. He explained in that calm, quiet voice that if I didn't walk away from you, and do it so completely that you would never come looking for me, he would make that report real. You'd be expelled. You'd face prison time. Your dream of being an artist, your entire future, would be a pile of ash." Adam stared at the fountain, the water blurring in his vision. He could feel the blood pounding in his ears. It was monstrous. It was unbelievable. But looking at the genuine terror that still lived in Amelia's eyes, he knew it was true. He had his lawyer, Harrison Blackwood, explain the legal nuances, she went on, her voice barely a whisper. How they would tie you up in court for years. How, even if you were acquitted, the accusation would follow you forever. They made me write that note. They stood over me while I did it. Then they took my phone, drove me to the airport, and put me on a plane to a school in Switzerland. I was a prisoner, Adam. I just didn't realize it until it was too late. "And the baby?" Adam's voice was hoarse. "Our daughter?" "I found out a month later. I was alone, thousands of miles away. I wanted to tell you. God, you have to believe me, I wanted to run back and tell you. But Harrison called me. He told me they knew I was pregnant, and he said, if you go back to him, we won't just ruin his life. We'll make sure he loses his child too. We'll paint him as an unfit father, a criminal. You will be saving your child from that." She finally broke, her shoulders slumping as sobs shook her body. "I was so scared. I was 19, and I was so scared. I believed them. I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was protecting her. It was a cowardly, terrible choice. But I made it. I chose to keep you safe, even if it meant you would hate me." Adam stood up and walked to the edge of the fountain, turning his back to her. He ran a hand through his hair, the cold spray of the water misting his face. Everything she said made a horrible kind of sense. And it didn't change a thing. "You should have told me," he said, his voice thick with a decade of pain. "You should have trusted me. We could have run. We could have fought them together. You didn't give me that choice. You decided my entire life for me. Amelia, I know." She wept. "I know I did. And it was wrong. I've lived with that every single day for 12 years. He turned back to face her. "And what now? You show up and expect me to just, what? Forget all that? Play happy families?" "No," she said, looking up, her face tear-streaked but resolute. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I probably don't deserve it. This isn't about me anymore. It's about Lucy." She stood and took a step towards him. "She's been asking about you for years. I've been telling her you were away. But she's smart, Adam. She knows there's more to it. She draws pictures of a father she's never met. She's this incredible, brilliant, funny, and deeply lonely little girl. And she deserves to know you. She deserves to know where she gets her talent for drawing and why she frowns just like you do when she's concentrating." Her plea hung in the air between them, more powerful than any apology. It shifted the foundation of his anger, pulling it away from the betrayal of the past and toward the terrifying responsibility of the future. "Even if you hate me for the rest of your life," Emilia whispered, her voice raw. "Please, Adam. Don't shut her out. Don't let my mistake punish her too." He looked away from her, at the children laughing and chasing pigeons near the park entrance. One of them, a little boy, tripped and fell, and his father was there in an instant, scooping him up, dusting him off, kissing his scraped knee. It was a simple, beautiful act. An act he'd been denied. An act a little girl with his eyes had been denied. The anger was still there, a hot coil in his gut. But beneath it, something new and fragile was taking root. A terrifying, powerful sense of connection to a child he had never met. "I need to think," he said, his voice barely audible over the sound of the fountain. It's too much." He didn't look at her again. He just turned and walked away, leaving Emilia standing alone by the fountain, the fate of their daughter, and any hope of a future, resting on the answer he still didn't have. Adam walked for hours. He had no destination, his feet moving aimlessly over the cracked city sidewalks, his mind a roaring sea of chaos. He passed storefronts and cafes, his own reflection a ghostly stranger in the glass. He saw a father teaching his daughter to ride a bike, her face a mixture of terror and glee. He saw a man who looked like him, and a girl who could have been his. Everywhere he looked, the world seemed to be showing him what he had lost. 11 years, 11 birthdays, 11 Christmases. First steps, first words, scraped knees, and bedtime stories. An entire childhood had been stolen from him, not by fate, but by a choice. A choice made by the woman he had once loved more than his own life. The anger was still there, a hot, bitter poison. Her story of her family's threats was monstrous. But was it an excuse? He had been poor, yes, but he wasn't weak. He would have fought for her, for them. They could have disappeared together, started over somewhere new. She hadn't given him that chance. She had judged him incapable of protecting them, and that was a betrayal almost as deep as the secret itself. He found himself standing outside the Morning Glory diner. The lights were on, the evening shift in full swing. He could see Maria through the window, directing a new waitress. This was his life. Predictable, safe. A world he had carefully constructed for his son, brick by brick, after the devastation of losing Sarah. And now Emilia had arrived with a wrecking ball. He pulled out his phone and called the diner. "Morning Glory, Maria speaking." "Hey, Maria, it's Adam." "Adam, are you okay? You rushed out of here today." "I was worried. I'm fine," he lied, the word feeling foreign in his mouth. "Listen, something's come up. I don't think I can make my shift tomorrow." There was a pause on the other end. Maria had a sixth sense for trouble. "Is it Sam?" "Is he all right?" "Sam's fine. It's complicated." "All right, honey," she said, her voice softening, choosing not to pry. "You just do what you need to do. Family comes first, always." You remember that the simple word struck him with the force of a physical blow. Family comes first. He had built his entire life around that principle. He had sacrificed his art, his dreams, all for Sam. How could he look his son in the eye every day, knowing he was ignoring the existence of his own daughter? A girl who was just as much his family as the little boy sleeping in the next room? He ended the call and finally headed home. The anger was still there, but it was no longer the only thing. Beneath it, A new feeling was taking hold, a heavy, undeniable sense of duty. He let himself into the apartment and went to Sam's room. In the soft glow of the nightlight, his son was a tangle of limbs and blankets, his face peaceful in sleep. Adam watched him, his heart aching. He thought of Lucy, a girl with his frown and her mother's eyes, drawing pictures of a father she didn't know. He imagined her at 5 years old, asking where her daddy was. He imagined her at 10, feeling that absence like a missing piece of herself. His anger at Amelia was a wildfire, but his love for his children was the ocean, and the ocean would always win. He couldn't punish Lucy for Amelia's mistakes. He couldn't let his own pain be the reason another child felt abandoned. He knew what he had to do. Amelia hadn't moved from the sofa in her hotel suite. She'd been staring at her phone for hours, every phantom buzz in the silent room making her jump. She had replayed their conversation 1,000 times, each time ending with the image of Adam's back as he walked away. She had failed. She had laid her soul bare, and it hadn't been enough. Lucy came out of her bedroom, rubbing her eyes. "Did he call?" Amelia's heart broke. "Not yet, sweetie. He hates us," Lucy said, her voice flat. "He doesn't hate you," Amelia insisted, her voice cracking. "He could never hate you." "He hates you then," Lucy corrected. "It's the same thing." She climbed onto the sofa and curled into her mother's side, a small, sad ball of resignation. Amelia held her, feeling like a complete and utter failure. She had broken everything. Just then, her phone vibrated on the coffee table. The screen lit up with an unknown number. Her breath caught. With a trembling hand, she answered it, putting it on speaker so Lucy could hear. "Hello? It's Adam." His voice was cold, distant, all business. Amelia sat bolt upright, motioning for Lucy to stay quiet. "Adam, I don't want to talk," he cut her off. "I just have something to say." There was a long, agonizing pause. "This doesn't change anything between us. What you did, I don't forgive you for it. I don't know if I ever can." Amelia closed her eyes, the words of physical pain. This was it. He was cutting them off for good. "But you were right," he continued, his voice tight with effort. "It's not about us. It's about her. I want to meet my daughter." The air rushed out of Amelia's lungs in a sob of pure, unadulterated relief. Tears streamed down her face. Lucy's head shot up, her eyes wide with disbelief and dawning hope. Adam's voice was firm, leaving no room for negotiation. He was taking back control. "Here's how it's going to happen. Tomorrow, the playground on Elm Street near my apartment. 3 o'clock. You bring Lucy, that's it. No security, no assistance, just you two." "Yes," Amelia whispered, nodding even though he couldn't see her. "Okay, yes, Adam, we'll be there." "Good." The line went dead. For a moment, Amelia and Lucy just stared at each other. Then, a slow, watery smile spread across Lucy's face. It was the first real smile Amelia had seen in days. She pulled her daughter into a fierce hug, burying her face in her hair. "He wants to meet me," Lucy whispered, as if saying it out loud would make it real. "Yes, baby," Amelia cried, holding her tight. "He wants to meet you." She had a chance. It was a fragile, terrifying, conditional chance, built on a foundation of anger and pain. But it was a chance. And for now, it was everything. The playground on Elm Street was Adam's territory. It was a small, well-kept square of green in their modest neighborhood, a place of countless memories. He had pushed Sam on these swings, helped him conquer his fear of the big slide, and bandaged more scraped knees on its worn wooden benches than he could count. Choosing this place was a deliberate act of control. This was his world, and Amelia was now a visitor in it. He and Sam arrived a few minutes before 3. Sam, oblivious to the monumental weight of the afternoon, ran straight for the sandbox. Adam sat on a bench, his heart hammering against his ribs. He felt like a man walking into a burning building. He was terrified of what he would find, what he would feel. What if he felt nothing? What if he looked at Lucy and saw only Amelia's betrayal? At 3 o'clock sharp, he saw them walking down the street. Amelia was holding Lucy's hand in a white-knuckled grip. Lucy was walking stiffly, her eyes wide as she scanned the playground. She was clutching a small, rectangular object in her other hand. A sketchbook. When she spotted Adam, she stopped, pulling on Amelia's hand. Adam's breath caught. She was real, not just a face in a diner or a ghost in his mind. A real, living, breathing little girl. His daughter. Amelia gave her a gentle nudge, and they continued forward, stopping a few feet from his bench. The silence was thick and suffocating. "Hi," Amelia said, her voice barely a whisper. Adam just nodded, his throat too tight to speak. His eyes were fixed on Lucy, who was hiding shyly behind her mother's leg. It was Sam who broke the spell. He looked up from his sandcastle, saw the new arrivals, and his 5-year-old's natural curiosity took over. He scrambled out of the sandbox, dusting his hands on his jeans, and trotted over. "Daddy, who's that?" he asked, pointing a sandy finger at Lucy. Adam finally found his voice. "Sam, this is a friend of mine, Amelia. And this is her daughter, Lucy." The words felt inadequate. A lie of omission so vast it was dizzying. "Hi," Sam said, giving Lucy a bright, uncomplicated smile. "I'm Sam. I'm 5. Do you want to see my castle? It has a moat." Lucy looked up at her mother, who gave her an encouraging nod. She stepped out from behind Amelia's leg, a hesitant, fragile movement. "I'm Lucy," she said softly. "I'm 11. "Wow, you're old," Sam declared with awe. He grabbed her hand, his small, grubby fingers closing around hers. "Come on!" He started pulling her towards the sandbox, and after a moment of surprise, Lucy allowed herself to be led, a tiny, tentative smile gracing her lips. Left alone, Adam and Amelia stood in a profoundly awkward silence, two strangers watching their children meet for the first time. "Thank you for this, Adam," Amelia said, her eyes locked on the kids. "I'm not doing it for you," he repeated, the words a necessary shield for his own raw emotions. He watched as Sam chattered away, pointing out the features of his sandy creation, and Lucy knelt, listening with a quiet, solemn attention. After a few minutes of unbearable silence, Adam knew he couldn't put it off any longer. He walked over to the sandbox, his legs feeling like they were made of lead. He knelt in the sand a few feet away from Lucy. She looked up at him, her smile vanishing, her expression becoming guarded again. He could see the storm of hope and fear in her eyes. He had no idea what to say. The words, "I'm your father," were a mountain in his throat. He couldn't move. It was Lucy who spoke first. She held up the sketchbook she'd been protecting. "My mom said you like to draw too," she said, her voice small. The simple sentence struck him with unexpected force. Like to draw. A past tense world. He had once lived to draw. "I used to," he managed to say. "A long time ago. Can I see?" She nodded and opened the sketchbook. The pages were filled with intricate, imaginative drawings. There was a soaring dragon with detailed, shimmering scales, a mysterious forest with glowing flowers, and a portrait of a woman who looked like Amelia, but sadder. Her talent was undeniable. It was raw, and it was familiar. It was his. These are really good, Lucy," he said, his voice thick with an emotion he couldn't name. "This dragon, the shading on the wings is amazing." A pleased pink blush colored her cheeks. "I'm still learning how to do shadows." "You've got a great eye for it," he said, pointing to a detail. "See how you captured the light here? That's the hard part." For a few minutes, they just talked about drawing. They talked about pencils and paper, and how hard it was to get hands to look right. The conversation was easy, natural, a tiny island of normalcy in a sea of chaos. He saw flashes of himself in the way she tilted her head when she was thinking, in the quiet intensity of her focus. He felt a connection, fragile and new, beginning to sprout in the barren ground of his anger. Suddenly, a small cry broke the peace. Sam, trying to climb a play structure that was a little too big for him, had slipped and scraped his knee. Adam was on his feet in an instant, his parental instincts taking over completely. He scooped up a wailing Sam and carried him to the bench. "Shh, you're okay, buddy, you're okay," he soothed, inspecting the raw, bleeding scrape. "Just a little battle wound for the castle defender." Amelia rushed over, her face pale with concern. "Is he all right?" Before Adam could answer, Lucy was there, holding out a small cartoon character bandage. "My mom always has these," she said quietly. Adam looked from the bandage in Lucy's hand to Sam's tear-streaked face. For a single, surreal moment, they were all there, together, focused on a small boy's scraped knee. A fleeting, painful glimpse of a family that never was. He took the bandage from Lucy, his fingers brushing against hers. "Thanks, Lucy," he said softly. He cleaned and bandaged Sam's knee, his movements calm and practiced. The crisis was over as quickly as it had begun. But the moment lingered. He knew he had to end it. The emotional toll was too high. It was getting late, the sun beginning to dip below the rooftops. "All right, Sammy," he said, lifting his son off the bench. "Time to go home. We've got to make dinner." He looked at Amelia and Lucy. "It's getting late." Amelia nodded, her expression unreadable. "Of course." She took Lucy's hand. The goodbye was as awkward as the hello. "It was nice to meet you, Sam," Lucy said politely. "Bye, Lucy," Sam chirped, waving. They started to walk away. Adam stood frozen, watching them go. He had done it. He had met her. And it was 1,000 times harder and 1,000 times more real than he had ever imagined. They were almost at the edge of the park when Lucy stopped. She turned back, her small face serious. She let go of her mother's hand and looked directly at him. "Will I see you again?" The question, so simple, so innocent, so profoundly important, hit Adam with the force of a physical blow. He looked at this little girl, his daughter, asking for the most basic thing a child could want from a parent. And in that moment, he had no idea what to say. The question hung in the cool afternoon air, a fragile thread connecting him to the daughter he barely knew. Lucy's eyes were wide with a hope so pure it was agonizing. Behind her, Amelia stood frozen, holding her breath, knowing that everything depended on his answer. The anger, the betrayal, the 12 years of pain. It was all there. A roaring chorus in his head telling him to be careful, to protect himself, to protect Sam. But when he looked at Lucy, he didn't see the past. He saw a little girl who deserved a future. He saw his own chin, his own brow, and a deep-seated loneliness he recognized because he had felt it himself. He couldn't be the cause of any more of her pain. He gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Yes," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. "I'll see you again." A brilliant, breathtaking smile lit up Lucy's face. It was like watching the sun rise. Amelia let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding, her shoulders slumping in relief. Adam didn't smile back. He couldn't. This wasn't a happy ending. It was a terrifying beginning. He simply gave them one last, unreadable look before turning and taking Sam's hand, walking away before he could take the promise back. "He said yes," Lucy whispered, as soon as they were in the sleek, black car that had been waiting for them a block away. "He said he'll see me again." "I know, sweetie," Amelia said, her heart feeling fuller and more fragile than it had in years. She watched Lucy stare out the window, a dreamy, contented look on her face. For the first time, she hadn't just seen Adam Rhodes, the ghost from her mother's past. She had met a man who looked at her drawings, who was kind, who was her father. "Sam is funny," Lucy mused. "His castle didn't have a very good moat." Amelia laughed, a real, genuine laugh. "Well, maybe you can help him build a better one next time." Maybe, Lucy said, a hopeful lilt in her voice, as the car whisked them back towards the cold luxury of the hotel. Amelia felt a flicker of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in over a decade. Hope. It was terrifying and exhilarating. Adam hadn't forgiven her, far from it. But he hadn't shut the door. He had looked at their daughter and chosen her over his anger. It was more than she had deserved, and everything she had prayed for. "Daddy, is Lucy your friend?" Sam asked as they climbed the stairs to their apartment. "Something like that, buddy," Adam said, his mind still reeling. "Is she my friend too?" "Yeah, I think so." Inside, the apartment felt small. The familiar comfort of its worn furniture and Sam's scattered toys now felt cramped, a world away from the polished, expensive air that clung to Amelia and Lucy. He made mac and cheese for dinner, the motions automatic. His thoughts were a tangled mess. He had made a promise. Now what? How did a man who worked 60 hours a week at a diner and a girl who was heir to a billion-dollar fortune get to know each other? How did he introduce a sister to a son who had no idea what that even meant? He was in over his head. He had stepped off a cliff without knowing if there was anything below to catch him. He watched Sam meticulously line up his dinosaur figures on the rug. Maria's words echoed in his head. Family comes first. He now had more family than he knew what to do with. Later that evening, after Lucy was asleep, there was a sharp, authoritative knock on the door of the penthouse suite. Amelia's heart leaped, foolishly thinking it might be Adam, before cold reality set in. Adam didn't know where she was staying. She opened the door to find two stone-faced men in dark suits, and standing between them, Harrison Blackwood. He smiled, a thin reptilian stretching of his lips. "May I come in, Amelia?" It wasn't a request. She stepped back, her blood turning to ice. He walked past her, his expensive shoes silent on the plush carpet. He surveyed the opulent room with a proprietary air. "Cute little playground date today," he began, his tone deceptively casual. "Touching." Your father was not moved. "Get out, Harrison," Amelia said, her voice shaking but firm. "I'm afraid I can't do that," he said, turning to face her. The smile was gone. "I warned you. You were told to end it, and instead, you escalated. You introduced the child. That was a grave miscalculation. She has a right to know her father. She has a right to the fortune, the legacy that your father has built," he countered, his voice like cold steel. "And you, with your sentimental little reunion, are putting all of that in jeopardy. Your father now considers you to be an unstable influence." Amelia felt a dread so profound, it made her nauseous. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about custody," Harrison said, the words landing like blows. "Your father is prepared to file an emergency petition with the court. We will claim that you are emotionally unstable, and that by bringing a penniless, unrelated male into your daughter's life, you are creating a dangerous and confusing environment for her. We will paint him as a grifter, a threat. We have a team of psychologists ready to testify. We will bury him in litigation and character assassination, and we will win, Amelia. The court will grant your father sole custody of his granddaughter to protect her from her reckless mother." The room spun. Amelia grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. "You can't," she breathed. "She's my daughter, and you are his," Harrison said coldly. "He giveth, and he taketh away. He is giving you one final choice." He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "You will pack your bags. You and Lucy will be on a flight to London tomorrow morning. You will never contact Adam Rhodes again. You will tell Lucy it was a mistake, that he didn't want to see her. You will break her heart, yes, but you will get to keep her. Or you can defy your father again, and you will lose her for good." He straightened his tie. His work done. "The choice is yours. A car will be here for you at 7 a.m. He turned and walked out, the two men following him like shadows, leaving Amelia alone in the silent, gilded cage. The hope she had so briefly held, now shattered into a million pieces. She was trapped. If she stayed, she would lose her daughter. If she left, she would become the monster her daughter would always remember, the mother who had given her a father only to rip him away forever. The silence in the penthouse after Harrison left was heavier and more terrifying than any shouting could have been. Emilia stood motionless for a long time, his words echoing in the vast, empty room. "We will take your daughter from you." It was the ultimate checkmate. Her father hadn't just threatened to ruin Adam. He had aimed his weapon at the one thing in the world Emilia could not bear to lose. Her first instinct was a familiar, chilling one. Flight. The muscle memory of fear, ingrained in her for 12 years, took over. She walked on numb legs into Lucy's bedroom. Her daughter was asleep, her face soft and peaceful in the dim light from the hallway. On her nightstand was the sketchbook, open to a new drawing she must have started after they got back. It was a crude but hopeful sketch of the playground. A tall stick figure, Adam, a small one, Sam, and a slightly bigger one with long hair, Lucy, all standing together. A sob caught in Emilia's throat. Her father was demanding she destroy that picture, erase that hope. He was asking her to tell her daughter that the man she had just met, the father she had dreamed of, didn't want her. She went back into the living room and began to pack, her movements robotic. A suitcase lay open on the floor. She folded Lucy's clothes, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grasp the fabric. This was what she did. She ran. She protected people by disappearing. It was the only way she knew. She pulled out her phone to text Adam. The message was cold, clinical, and cruel, designed to sever the tie completely. "Something has come up. I'm sorry, but we can't see you again. It was a mistake." Her thumb hovered over the send button. She thought of Adam's face when she told him about her family, the flicker of understanding behind the wall of pain. She thought of his promise to Lucy, "Yes, I'll see you again." This text would make him a liar. It would prove that he was right not to trust her. It would confirm every worst fear he had about her, that she was weak, that she was careless with people's hearts, that she would always, always run. She looked again at Lucy's drawing. She saw the little stick figure with long hair standing next to her father. She had made a promise to Lucy, too. A silent promise in the car when she had laughed and talked about next time. Breaking that promise would be a deeper betrayal than anything her father could threaten her with. It would be a betrayal of her own child. And in that moment, something inside her snapped. The fear was still there, a cold, coiling serpent in her gut. But for the first time, it was eclipsed by something stronger. Rage. A white-hot, defiant rage against her father, against Harrison, against the gilded cage she had lived in her entire life. She was done running. She slammed the suitcase shut, half empty. She deleted the text to Adam. Her family was a Goliath, armed with money and power and an utter lack of morality. She couldn't fight them alone. But she wasn't alone anymore. There was one other person in the world who had the right to fight for Lucy. It was a desperate, insane gamble. He had every reason to slam the door in her face, but it was the only move she had left. She scribbled a quick note for the hotel nanny who stayed in an adjoining room, telling her not to disturb Lucy. Then she grabbed her coat and her car keys and left. The drive to Adam's neighborhood was a blur. She parked down the street from his apartment building, the modest brick structure a world away from her own. She walked to the front door, her heart pounding a frantic, terrified rhythm. For 10 minutes, she just stood there in the cold, her courage failing. What was she doing? Showing up on his doorstep in the middle of the night, bringing a storm with her. Finally, thinking of Lucy's hopeful smile, she forced herself up the 3 flights of stairs. She stood in front of his apartment door, number 3B. She raised a trembling hand and knocked. The seconds that followed were the longest of her life. She heard muffled movement inside, then the click of the lock. The door opened a few inches, and Adam stood there, blinking at her in the dim hallway light. He was wearing an old t-shirt and sweatpants. His hair was a mess, and his face was etched with sleep and confusion. which quickly hardened into anger. "Amelia, what the hell are you doing here?" "It's almost midnight." His voice was a low, dangerous growl. He glanced back into his apartment, clearly worried about waking Sam. "Adam, I know. I'm sorry," she stammered, words failing her. "I had nowhere else to go." "That's not my problem," he said, starting to close the door. "We have an arrangement. You don't show up at my home." "No, wait, please." The desperation in her voice stopped him. "You don't understand. They're trying to take her away from me." His eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about? Who is?" And so, standing in the dingy hallway of his apartment building, it all came pouring out. The carefully constructed walls of the billionaire CEO crumbled, and all that was left was a terrified mother. "My father's lawyer came to my hotel tonight," she said, her voice breaking. "He knows about our meeting. He knows I brought Lucy to meet you. He gave me an ultimatum. She told him everything. The 7 a.m. flight to London, the demand that she cut him off forever. And if I don't," she concluded, her voice cracking into a sob, "he's going to file for sole custody of Lucy. He's going to use you to do it. He'll tell the court that you're a danger to her, that I'm an unstable mother for bringing you into her life. He will use all his money and all his power to destroy you in public and take my daughter away from me." She looked at him, her face stripped of all pride, all defenses. "I was going to run. I almost did it, but I can't. I can't hurt her like that, and I can't lie to you again." She took a shaky breath, laying her entire fate in his hands. "My whole life, my family has controlled me with threats and fear. I can't fight them alone. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know you hate me, but you're her father. Please, Adam, help me. Help us save our daughter." She stood there trembling, tears streaming down her face. She had offered him no solutions, no plan. Only the raw, terrifying truth. Adam stared at her, his expression a mixture of shock, fury, and utter disbelief. He could slam the door, lock it, and let her be consumed by the fire she had started. Or he could step into the flames with her. The fate of a family he never knew he had rested entirely on his next move. Adam stared at the woman on his doorstep. She was a vision of wealth and power, completely undone, stripped bare by a terror he was starting to understand. The angry, bitter part of him, the part that had nursed a grudge for 12 years, wanted to slam the door. It wanted to tell her this was the mess she had made, and she could lie in it. But then he thought of Lucy's face at the playground, her hesitant smile, her hopeful question, "Will I see you again?" He had made a promise. He looked past Amelia's trembling figure into his own apartment, where his son was sleeping, safe and loved, his family. And Lucy, whether he was ready for it or not, was his family too. You don't leave family to fight monsters alone. With a deep, weary sigh, he opened the door wider. "Get in," he said, his voice a low grumble, "and be quiet. My son is sleeping." The relief that washed over Amelia's face was so profound she nearly buckled. He closed and locked the door behind her, the sound echoing in the small, silent apartment. She stood awkwardly in his living room, a Chanel coat in a world of second-hand furniture and scattered children's toys. It felt like two galaxies colliding. "Kitchen," he commanded, flicking on a small lamp. "Tell me everything, and I mean everything. The lawyer's name, exactly what he said. Don't leave a single detail out." In the harsh fluorescent light of his tiny kitchen, she recounted the entire conversation with Harrison Blackwood. She explained the threat of the custody battle, the plan to slander him, the power and influence her father wielded like a weapon. Adam listened, leaning against the counter, his arms crossed, his expression grim. He didn't interrupt. He just absorbed it all, the muscle in his jaw tightening. When she finished, the only sound was the hum of the old refrigerator. "So they want to paint me as a grifter," Adam said, his voice dangerously calm. "A danger to my own daughter." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "Let them try." Amelia looked at him. confused by his lack of panic. "Adam, you don't understand. They'll bury us. They have the best lawyers in the country. They can buy judges, witnesses, anything they want." "No, you don't understand," he shot back, his eyes flashing with a fire she hadn't seen since they were kids. "I'm not some rich kid you can push around. I'm a man who works for a living. I pay my rent. I raise my son. The people in my life, my boss, my neighbors, the regulars at the diner, they know who I am. Your father and his snake of a lawyer live in a glass tower. I live on the ground. Let's see what happens when they try to come down here and fight in the mud." His strength, so different from the cold corporate power she was used to, was startling. It was a grounded, stubborn resilience that she had forgotten existed. "What do we do?" she asked, the word "we" feeling strange and new on her tongue. "We fight back," he said simply. He started pacing the small kitchen. "Okay, this Harrison guy. He's expecting you to be scared. He's expecting you to run. That's been your move for 12 years, right? So the first thing we do is the one thing they won't expect. We stay." He stopped and looked at her. "But we can't do it with your people. We need our own lawyer, someone they won't see coming, someone who isn't afraid to get his hands dirty." A flicker of an idea crossed his mind. "There's a guy," he said, thinking out loud. "A regular at the diner. Grant Ellison. He's a public defender mostly. Looks like he sleeps in his car, but Maria says he's one of the smartest legal minds in the city. He specializes in fighting big corporations on behalf of people they've screwed over. He hates guys like your father." Just then, a small cry came from the bedroom. "Daddy?" Adam's entire demeanor softened in an instant. "It's okay, Sam," he called out gently. "Go back to sleep." "I'm right here." He looked at Amelia. "Excuse me." He disappeared into the bedroom. Amelia could hear the murmur of his voice, low and soothing. A few moments later, he returned. The brief, tender moment of fatherhood hung in the air between them. He walked to the stove and filled a kettle with water without a word. "I'm so sorry I brought all of this to your door, Adam," she whispered, the guilt gnawing at her. He placed the kettle on the burner and turned to face her, his expression weary but clear. "You didn't," he said, and the words shifted the world beneath her feet. "She's my daughter, my family. They're the ones who brought this fight to me." He wasn't just a victim of her past anymore. He was claiming his place in the present. He was claiming his right to be a father. He made 2 cups of instant coffee, the steam rising between them in the quiet kitchen. They were no longer ex-lovers. They were 2 parents, awake at 2 in the morning, terrified for their child, plotting a war. "Okay," he said, his voice firm, taking charge. "Here's the plan. You're going to go back to your hotel. You're not going to pack a single thing. You will not get on that 7 a.m. flight. You will not answer your phone. You will not talk to Harrison or your father or anyone else. You're going to sit tight and wait. Wait for what?" "For them to realize you're not running," he said, a grim smile touching his lips. "And at 7:01 a.m., I'm calling Grant. We're not going to defend. We're going to attack. We're going to file for joint custody and petition for a restraining order against your father for harassment. We're going on the offensive." It was a bold, terrifying plan. It was insane. It was the first thing that had made sense all night. Amelia stood up, her entire being flooded with a strange, unfamiliar feeling. It was a cocktail of terror and a wild, defiant hope. She was finally, truly, not alone. She walked to the door, and for the first time, Adam didn't look at her with anger or resentment. He looked at her like a partner in a battle they were both about to fight. "Adam," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you." He just gave a single, sharp nod. "Go. Get some rest. The war starts at dawn." She left his apartment and walked down the stairs, the first rays of morning light beginning to filter through the grimy hallway window. For the first time in her adult life, she wasn't running from a fight. She was walking toward one. The first hint of dawn was painting the sky a bruised purple when Amelia left. Adam stood at his window and watched her get into the sleek, anonymous car, a ghost returning to a world of shadows. For a moment, he felt a surge of panic. This was insane. He was a waiter. He was about to declare war on a titan of industry. But then he went to check on Sam, who had kicked off his blankets. As Adam gently tucked him back in, he looked at his son's peaceful, trusting face. The panic subsided, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. He wasn't just a waiter. He was a father, and a father protects his family. At 7:01 a.m., with a cup of coffee in his hand, he made the call. "Yeah?" a gruff voice answered, sounding like it was in the middle of a traffic jam. "Is this Grant Ellison?" "Who's asking?" "My name is Adam Rhodes. I'm a waiter at the Morning Glory." Maria's friend. The tone on the other end shifted instantly, becoming warmer. "Adam, of course. Best cheesesteak in the city. What can I do for you? Don't tell me Maria's in trouble." "No, I am," Adam said. He gave Grant the lightning-fast version of the story. The daughter, the billionaire, the custody threat. There was a moment of silence on the line. Then a low whistle. "A Chambers," Grant said, and Adam could practically hear the man's eyes light up. "Amelia Chambers' father, the old dragon himself." "Oh, son, you haven't just stepped in it. You've kicked the whole hornet's nest." He paused. "I've been waiting for a crack at that family for years. I'm in. My office? 1 hour." The weeks that followed were a blur of organized chaos. Just as Harrison had promised, the Chambers machine roared to life. Scurrilous articles appeared in tabloids, painting Adam as a gold-digging opportunist. Private investigators started talking to his neighbors. Formal, threatening letters on thick, creamy stationery arrived daily. But Adam's world fought back. Maria submitted a sworn affidavit about Adam's character that was so glowing it was practically poetry. Mr. Henderson and a dozen other regulars offered to be character witnesses. His landlord wrote a letter confirming he was a model tenant. It was an army of ordinary people, armed with nothing but the truth. Amelia, meanwhile, was transforming. Under Grant's guidance, she became an active warrior instead of a passive victim. She spent her days digging through digital archives, finding old emails and financial records that established her father's pattern of control and manipulation. She was no longer afraid of the monster. She was mapping his weaknesses. The one rule they both clung to was protecting the children. Once a week, in the middle of the storm, they met at the playground. For 1 hour, there were no lawyers, no threats. There was only Adam pushing Sam on the swing, Amelia helping Lucy with a drawing, and the two children slowly, tentatively, building the fragile bridge of brotherhood and sisterhood. In those moments, Adam saw the woman he had first loved, and she saw the man she had been a fool to leave. The breaking point came a month later. Realizing his usual tactics of intimidation were failing, Amelia's father demanded a face-to-face meeting. They met in Grant's cluttered, chaotic office, a neutral ground that clearly infuriated the opposition. On one side of the mahogany table sat Amelia, Adam, and a surprisingly composed Grant in a rumpled suit. On the other sat Amelia's father, a man whose cold arrogance radiated off him like a chill, flanked by the reptilian Harrison Blackwood. "Let's end this foolishness," her father began, his voice dripping with condescension. He didn't look at Adam, only at Amelia. "You've had your little tantrum. It's over. I am prepared to offer Mr. Rhodes a one-time settlement of $5 million to relinquish all parental rights and disappear. It's more than he deserves." Before Amelia could even react, Adam spoke. His voice was calm, steady, and utterly immovable. "You don't get it," he said, looking the billionaire directly in the eye for the first time. "You think everything can be bought, every person has a price. But I don't want your money. I want my daughter. I want her to be safe and happy and free from you. And you are not going to stand in my way," her father scoffed. "You have no idea what you're up against." "Actually," Grant Ellison chimed in, leaning forward with a shark-like grin, "it's you who doesn't. While you've been busy trying to smear a good man's name, we've been busy too." He slid a folder across the table. Amelia found some very interesting correspondence regarding the illegal merger of a rival tech firm back in 2012. The SEC would be fascinated to learn about the back channels you used to bankrupt them. The public would be even more fascinated to learn you did it based on proprietary information, stolen by your daughter's then-boyfriend, who you subsequently had framed for a different crime to cover your tracks. Harrison Blackwood's face went pale. Amelia's father stared at the documents, his mask of arrogant control finally shattering, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated fury. He had been outmaneuvered. The choice was no longer his. He could continue his petty custody battle and risk a federal investigation that would destroy his entire empire, or he could retreat. He stood up, his chair scraping violently against the floor. "This is not over," he hissed at Amelia. But they all knew it was. He had lost. 6 months later, the Morning Glory Diner was closed for a private party. The greasy spoon smell was gone, replaced by the scent of fresh paint and possibility. The place was packed with a joyous, eclectic crowd. Mr. Henderson, Maria, Grant Ellison, and a dozen kids from the neighborhood. Adam stood by a newly installed easel, a charcoal pencil in his hand, showing a young boy how to sketch a face. At the other end of the room, Amelia was laughing, deep in conversation with a group of parents. The diner was no longer a diner. It was the Morning Glory Arts Center, a free community space for kids, funded by an anonymous donation from a newly established foundation run by Amelia Chambers. Across the room, Lucy and Sam were sitting at a table, their heads bent together in concentration, working on a large drawing. They were no longer two separate children from two separate worlds. They were simply brother and sister. Amelia walked over to Adam, a soft smile on her face. "You're a good teacher," she said. "I had a good inspiration," he replied, his eyes meeting hers. The anger was gone. The hurt had faded to a scar. What was left was something new, something quiet and strong, built not on a whirlwind romance, but on a shared battle and a shared love for their children. Just then, Lucy and Sam ran over, holding up their finished drawing. It was a picture of the four of them, standing in front of the Arts Center. Sam had drawn the squiggly stick figures, but Lucy had carefully sketched their faces. They were all holding hands, and they were all smiling. Adam looked at the drawing, then at Amelia, his partner, his ally, his second chance. He reached out and took her hand, their fingers lacing together. It wasn't just a new chapter, it was a whole new book. And this time, they would write it together. And just like that, another story is over. I always wonder where you all are, and what you're doing when you listen to these. If you feel like sharing, drop a comment and let me know. Are you on a long drive, working on something, or just winding down for the night? It's nice to picture the story finding a home with you, wherever you are. If you'd like more stories like this one to keep you company on your journey, you know what to do. Hitting subscribe and that little bell means you'll always have another one waiting for you when you need it. A simple like helps others find a companion in these tales too. Thanks for letting me share this space and time with you. It really is a privilege. Until the next one, stay safe out there.